Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Sadgurum Pranatosmyaham. Om Shri Krishna Govinda Narayana Om. Okay, stage 2. So stage 1's a blueprint. That's the knowledge. God, for every creation you have to have 3 things. First one's knowledge. Okay? Maybe we should do stage 3 next, but we'll do stage 2. We'll do them in order. We're just breaking them down so you can understand that, you know, what you are here as a person is completely set up. This should really stop you from trying to be different. Okay? No, this is big. Human beings have a huge problem. That no other species wants to be anything other than what it is. There are billions of creatures here, and there's no dog that wants to be a cat, and there's no fish that wants to be a bird. It's not like that. Nothing wants to be different. Everything accepts its program, accepts the sattva, the instructions that Ishvara has put into it, and faithfully executes its program, except human beings. They're the wild card, because they have free will. They have what? Reflected awareness. That is, they have enough sattva in the reflection to become self-aware, to become aware of themselves. And because of that factor, they can evaluate themselves unfairly. They're biased. They can become biased and prejudiced about themselves, either favorably or unfavorably. Projections are both positive projections about who you are, people who think they're so wonderful, or they're negative projections about who you are, people who think they're not wonderful at all. No other creature thinks it's wonderful or not wonderful. None of them have self-esteem issues, only human beings. So this should make you understand that you are the way you are by no fault of your own, that it's only Ishvara that's made you this way, and you can offload the guilt, whatever it is, that judgment, you can offload that on Ishvara, and then if you want to work on it, you can work on it. We'll give you the tools to work on it. But if not, you can just accept yourself as you are. That's called love. Love is understanding. Love is what you stand on. That's why we worship the feet in India. Feet represent your understanding, and your understanding is love. Love is your understanding. When you understand things, you love them. You have no choice. Understand? Now, stage 2. Consciousness reflected in a dull mirror. Okay? This is consciousness reflected in a bright mirror. See the bright sattva? It's just, there's no impurities in it. It's bright, it's clear. So these are the people who, most of the gurus are gurus on the basis of epiphanies that happened when they were sattvic. Ramana, Andrew Cohen was one. He was a good example. His mind was sattvic for a little while, and he was very bright. He was very bright. His mind was sattvic, and so he was very inspirational. Your inspiration comes from sattva. If you're an inspired person, it's because you have a lot of sattva. But most people's enlightenment is based upon a period of time when their mind was predominantly sattvic, where the rajas and tamas was suppressed, and they saw the self reflecting in their mind, and they experienced bliss and upliftment. They experienced all these wonderful spiritual feelings. All the spiritual feelings take place in the sattva, and they declared themselves to be enlightened on the basis of that experience. And that's not enlightenment. We call it faux enlightenment. It's fake enlightenment. It's fake because what? It doesn't last. When the other gunas come up, you see in the case of Mr. Cohen, it's a good example. The sattva was repressed for a long time, but there was a lot of rajas there. So rajas causes anger. Rajas produces anger and abuse. And so he was aggressive and abusive at the same time. There was enough sattva there to keep the idea going, but there was also the rajas coming up all the time. It was suppressed by the sattva, but it kept coming out and over-dominating the sattva, and eventually it destroyed his sattva. And people left him. They refused to support him anymore because... So that's what you call experiential enlightenment. You see all these gurus, Hindu gurus that come to the States and get involved in the sex and the money. Sex and money are rajas and tamas. And they were great while they were in India and when they were with their gurus and they were in their ashrams. And in Indian society, you know, you don't really just sleep around or just make money out of people. It's you know, if you're in the yoga world or in the, you know, and you have some epiphanies, you're still pretty clean and pretty pure. And so he could maintain the sattva in that environment, in the ashram environment. Mahesh Yogi is a good example. Mahesh Yogi could maintain the sattva because he was in India, and he lived in Rishikesh and in Himalayas even before the days before Rishikesh had just become a spiritual business place. As soon as he got to the West, what did he start doing? In fact, he was an accountant in the ashram, up in the Himalayas, in his guru's ashram. He's the guy that kept the books. And he was still sattvic and had the glow, but as soon as he got to the West, that rajas came out and he starts making money. He ends up, you know, making maybe $1 billion or $2 billion, and the whole thing becomes a huge money sump. A great big money thing, because the rajas came out and created all that desire for wealth, and he took advantage of the teaching to make a bunch of money. Or the guys like Satchidananda, who were really good yogis, beautiful men and beautiful yogis, and they were fine in America, but when their sex vows, when they got to America and all these beautiful women are throwing themselves, the Western women are throwing themselves at them, you know. Oh, I think I'll get a fast track to enlightenment. I'll screw the guru, you know. So the women jump into the bed with him, and then that vasana, that tamaguna, that rajaguna, tamaguna vasana has never been taken care of. So suddenly there's a fertile field for expressing that, and then that takes over their sattva, their radiance goes. Then you know, then they start. The women claim they're abused and this and that and the other thing, and then they lose their reputation, and they have to go back to India with their tail between their legs, disgraced. You know, yeah. It's just a good problem because they don't, you know, they don't do their sadhana. When they get this vision, when their sattva's there, they don't continue to do their sadhana. They don't work on their rajas and tamas. They think, oh, I've got the vision. I'm enlightened. I'm finished. I'm done. Or the one I remember when I was in Tirunamala, the word was, I'm cooked. That was what they used to say. These were the Papaji people when they come down to, and they thought they were enlightened. So I talked to them in the thing, and then they always had to tell me at some point during the conversation that I'm cooked. And I got so sick and tired of it one day, I said, you know what? That's great, but I'm the fire that cooked you. So I was hated from that time on. They spread it around. Meaning consciousness. Fire of consciousness cooks you. If you're cooked in consciousness. But they think, well, I'm done. That self-realization, just understanding that I'm a self is enough on the basis of some epiphanies, enough, and there's nothing more to do. Now I can go out, hang out a shingle, become a guru, ring the bell, get everybody to come to church, I can help you, enlighten you, whatever it is. And so they stop growing. Because they don't understand how their mind works and how the gunas work. Just don't understand it. Never been taught. And never really did any real sadhana anyway. Even the ones who did sadhana, didn't do it properly when they got famous or when they got their epiphanies and started claiming they're enlightened, and they didn't. So we're telling you this to prevent your enlightenment sickness here. Okay? You got a mind, you're going to have a mind as long as you're here. That mind's going to be, what? Controlled by these gunas, and you better learn how to control these gunas. And we're saying, okay, you can control them, but if you don't know what they are and how they work, and you go off in some kind of big spiritual state, actually denying the mind, you just say, well, that's not me. I'm raping and robbing, but that's not me. That's for the good of the world, I'm raping and robbing. I'm not really raping and robbing. You see, I'm really the self. So it just looks like I'm raping and robbing. They have all these clever justifications and rationalizations why their rajas and their tamas, but are justified in a teaching context. And so, people get the idea that, well, there's no moral dimension to this thing, there's no purity dimension, there's no dharma dimension to this thing, and they just think, well, once I get enlightened, I can just have my way with the world. And you can, sort of, that's the point. Because in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, isn't it? At least he's had an epiphany, but I haven't even had an epiphany. I have never experienced, and had a non-dual experience, or a transcendental experience, or an out-of-body experience. I've never had those. So this guy's had them. He must be way beyond me. So whatever he says that qualifies him to tell me something. Well, it doesn't. Anyway, stage 2. So we're going to talk about this is where the pesky little problems come up in stage 2. Consciousness reflected in a dull mirror. When the pure sattva guna is mixed with rajas and tamas, it's called Raja Malina. It means impure sattva. Because they're always mixing, you see. They're all, you can't. Well, if it's predominant rajas, it's still mixed. Predominant sattva, it's still mixed with rajas and tamas. But when the tamas starts to come up and the rajas starts to come up, then what? Then you have a mixture. You have some sattva and then rajas and tamas. So the sattva gets what? Contaminated by the rajas and tamas, because they're all in the same order of reality. They're all mithya. They're all in the world. So they're all interacting with each other. It's not that it's not that there's a clean line between these three energies. Understand? So that you can isolate one energy and stay only in one energy all the time. You can't do that. It's not set up that way. So it says here, and that's called prakriti or matter, nature. And then he says here, it is avidya, personal ignorance. It is the causal body, because it generates the objects that present themselves to consciousness. Okay. It generates this object. You need to create something. You've got an idea. Say you've got a pot. You want to make a pot out of clay. Well, the clay is not going to transform itself into a pot, is it? Because it's inert. And the knowledge can't transform the clay into a pot either, can it? Because it's inert. Neither, knowledge is inert. So I need some power that what? Will transform the clay according to the idea. In other words, I need some active energy here to what? To the work on matter. I need an idea to form the clay, and I need the energy to transform the clay, to get the pot, whatever it is. So enter the Rajaguna. And what does this Rajaguna do? It generates the objects that present themselves to consciousness. Now, avidya means personal ignorance. That's the time, that's what Maya is, macrocosmic ignorance, and avidya is personal ignorance. The jiva appears, but it's ignorant. It doesn't know what it is. It doesn't know that it's the self. That's caused when the pure mirror of matter is sullied by what? By rajas and tamas. Produces the avidya. That's why you don't know who you are. That's why you say, I'm not free. These people say, I'm not free. I'm bound. That's called avidya. We know they have avidya because people say, I'm bound. But we know they're not bound because we know it's their only consciousness. So, and their ever-free consciousness, that I, that eternal, ever-experienced I, is always free. It's never bound. But people say, I don't know who I am. I'm bound, I'm suffering. That's what they say. So we know very well that they're under the spell of avidya then. So then we can work with them then. So they've admitted their ignorance. Now there's people who don't know that they're bound. Now that's the first stage. They're like the Donald Trumps. They don't know that they're ignorant. But, at least I know that I'm ignorant, so we've got something to work with there. Anyway, okay, and what does this avidya do? It is multifaceted, diverse, and pluralistic. In other words, there are just many, many facets to it. It's diversified, it diversifies into all sorts of names and forms, and what else does it do? It's pluralistic. There's just lots of them. And it's complex. In fact, this is why we rarely ever get out of samsara. Because it creates this tremendous novelty and variety and complexity here. It's a sexy, juicy creation. I call it beautiful, intelligent ignorance. Maya or Ishvara is beautiful, intelligent ignorance. It's not ignorant. Ishvara is not ignorant. But Ishvara projects such an amazingly beautiful, incredibly complex and interesting creation that I get fascinated. I'm fascinated by stuff. I'm fascinated by my mind. I'm fascinated by my feelings. I'm fascinated by my body, the energies and all this sort of stuff. I become fascinated. This is amazing. There's people who spend their whole life studying nematodes or fingernails. I don't know what. Within your fingernails, there's a whole universe in your fingernails. Did you know that? I know you're not interested in fingernails, but butterflies. How many lepidopterists? Lepidopterists are people that usually start when they're kids. And I remember we had little cigar boxes with all of the butterflies, pins and little corks and little names on them and that sort of thing. We were fascinated by butterflies and moths, Cecropia moths and all various kinds of things. We collected all these things and had jars and kill jars and all sort of, when we were kids. And people spend their whole life just on one little tiny, tiny, minuscule corner, or viruses. Think of the world of viruses. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, when, you know, this is what it means by multifaceted and diverse and complex. The issue that happens at the Rajas stage, and the reason it's attractive is because when Maya happens, you forget who you are and you feel incomplete. It cuts you off from yourself. The ignorance cuts you off from yourself and you feel incomplete. And when you feel incomplete, then what do? You see a world around you that's very attractive. And you think, wow, if I could get that, you know, I would feel complete. And when you do get that, you do feel complete for a moment. So you think, oh, there must be something in there. See how samsara is starting here? Just how, with the presence of these gunas? See how the samsara is starting? Starting fascinated. And then you think, okay, maybe this will solve my problem. Right? See a beautiful, sexy man or woman, and you think, what do you think? You're lonely? You know you're lonely? You're sitting at home and nobody to talk to and you're all lonely. And then you meet somebody or you walk down the street and you see a beautiful woman or man, and you suddenly just, what? You imagine that lovely, beautiful form, you know, could complete you and you fall in love. Fall is the operative word here. And off you go. Off you go to grab that object to complete yourself. So that's just where it all starts here. It starts here long before you ever have these silly ideas in your head. Understand? Okay, it says here, I love this description. I wrote it, so. Excuse me. And what does this Rajas do? The Rajas is boom, the Big Bang. Rajas is the Big Bang. Obviously, I've just told the Big Bang's no longer the Big Bang, but I prefer to keep that. I mean, they say that what matters, what? Moving away from some central spot at, I don't know, millions of miles a second or something. I don't know what it is. So it means something must have exploded, and then everything is moving away from there. So it says here, and this is your Big Bang. At this stage, what does this do, this Rajas do? It's the energy which explodes all the matter. Busts it into billions of pieces. Okay? In the gases and solids and all of that, liquids and the whole air and fire and water and so forth and so on. It says it shatters the pure mirror of awareness, meaning sattva, and scatters it into innumerable shards. Now this mirror is a mirror, okay, so it's reflective. So now this mirror has been broken into billions of pieces by this tremendous energy. Boom! And it just explodes out, this reflective mirror, okay? So now you have billions, trillions of little tiny mirrors of different sizes. Elephant-sized mirrors, you have microbe-sized mirrors, you have human-sized mirrors, you have all these different shards of consciousness that have been projected out into the creation. What happens then? It says, and what? Into innumerable shards, shards mean pieces, which reflect awareness and in the form of what? Infinitely diverse living beings. Your living beings appear at this stage. The reflections. We're all, man is cast in the image of God. Bible says that. It's the same idea. It's the reflection theory, the reflection teaching. We're images of the self. Everything's got to be an image of the self because everything's generated out of the self. So how can it not be a reflection of the self? We're perfect reflections of the self, actually, humans. I know, I understand, it's a stretch. You know, because we think that so much misery has been inflicted on us by other human beings, and we have our likes and dislikes, and so we have a really hard time worshiping human beings. Every time you see a human being, you should see the self and you should worship it. When you see it, you will worship it if you see a human being. Understand? If you understand. Otherwise, what? You think that a human is not the self. But there's nothing that can't be, there's not one thing here that can be anything other than the self, is there? If reality is non-dual and creation happens in this way, then everybody's just the self. Body, mind, intellect, reflection, the whole thing has got to be nothing but the self. And that's worthy of worship. We have a hard time with that. Really hard time. As a result of Rajas, limitless awareness appears as a limited entity. Okay? You're actually a limited entity, but now limitless entity, but now entity is the wrong word for limitless, but we'll just say, call it awareness as a limitless entity. It becomes a limited entity at this stage of creation. It is called pranya jiva. This jiva thing there's a lot to it. There's more to it than we've discussed so far. It's called pranya jiva, the eternal individual. Okay, we talked about that yesterday. We talked about the non-eternal jiva, and we talked about the eternal jiva. This pranya jiva is the eternal individual. That means we're all people. Is there anybody here who's not a people? No. Huh? Because everybody here is a people. So that people that I am is called the eternal jiva. Now within that people there are apparently peculiarities. Although there aren't actually peculiarities, it looks like there are many different individuals here. Owing to what? The presence of the different bodies. Anyway, Julian.
Does every species has its own eternal jiva?
Pardon?
Does every species has its own eternal jiva? Like elephant, eternal jiva?
No, it's the same eternal jiva appearing in different species. The eternal jiva, a tree is a jiva. A tree just doesn't have a hankara, self-consciousness, or a microbe's a jiva. They're eternal. They're eternal. That's eternal consciousness in a form. Consciousness takes a form. It gets associated with a particular body. But it's the same jiva that's in a tree, that's in a microbe, that's in a dog, in a cat, in a human, it's the same jiva. It's the same eternal jiva. It's called pranya jiva.
And the rock?
Huh?
And the rock?
Rock doesn't have a jiva. We're going to talk about that. The rock's not a jiva. Oh, rock's not a jiva. We got another chart. We're going to see here where the rocks come from. You guys want to keep going with this? Is this interesting? Or you just want a bunch of psychological and spiritual stuff? I mean, to me, this is really
That's great.
This is cool.
You're absolutely cool.
Yes.
Where does the energy of the Rajas come from? To do the...
From Maya. Mayas are called as Shakti. Okay, that's a good question. Maya is called Trigun Atmika Shakti. Okay? That Shakti means energy. So in awareness, there is this power to create. Okay? It's not this power of Maya. We already discussed this, but we have to repeat it again because this is a very difficult teaching. This power of Maya is not the same as awareness, but it's not different from awareness. Huh? Somebody heard that? Oh, good. It's not the same, but it's not different. This is why it's so hard to understand Maya. Because what do you mean it's not the same, it's not, it's different? It's not the same and it's not different. That means it's something altogether other than what? Than awareness, and something altogether other than the effects, the creation itself. It's a standalone entity that seems to be completely outside of everything. Because how can awareness create? How can awareness create? There's no duality there, so you can't have a creation, can you? You only have a creation where you can split something up into two, and then you can create 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you can you start from 2, you start from 1, then you split that into 2, then you get 3, 4, 5, and then you get the whole thing. We don't call awareness one. Well, we do, but we don't. The reason we don't call it one, what do we call it?
Not two.
Not two. Now, why do we say awareness is not two? Why don't you just say it's one? Well, because one implies two. So the implied meaning of one is that everything came out of here, but nothing comes out of here. Even though everything comes out of there, nothing comes out of there. Because this is not two. It's not one, but it's not two either. It's something altogether other than the creation. So this power, this Maya power, is three kinds of energies, or Shaktis. Rajas Shakti is explosive, extroverted Shakti. The Rajas energy is responsible for projecting all of this stuff you have on people. I like him, I don't like her. You have likes? Does anybody here have likes and dislikes? No. If you have a like or a dislike, that's due to Rajas Shakti, Rajaguna. Rajaguna projects your own self-dissatisfaction or self-satisfaction. It projects it onto people and things. I don't like, ooh, that's an awful smell. Ooh. My mother could tell you what a Chinaman had for dinner, you know, the other side of the earth. If he farted, Chinaman farted. My mother could smell it. They're over in the Western world. It smells. I couldn't believe it smells. Ooh, that's an awful smell. No, that's not an awful smell. It's your own dislike projected on a smell. It's your own negativity, your own incompleteness and insufficiency projected on an object. That's caused by Rajaguna. You know, like Bill Clinton. I did not have sex with that woman. That's called tamoguna. That's hiding it. Now, he actually knew he had sex, so he wasn't in denial. But we often deny things that we don't know. We deny things that we know, and we unknowingly deny things that we do know. But in any case, so the concealing power, whenever you're hiding things and denying things, that's produced by tamoguna. These are your two basic psychological mechanisms that are causing the problem here. All my problems basically come, well, we have some sattva problems, but they're very small. The real pesky ones are Rajas and Tamas, projection and denial. We're going to talk about that as we move on here. But we're explaining this, you know, at the macrocosmic level. Later on, we're going to come down to the microcosmic level and show how these energies play out in our own minds. And I'm helping you to kind of make the correspondences between the original creation and, you know, what we're experiencing right now. So anyway, so good. Yeah, and those three Shaktis are the revealing Shakti, power of knowledge. It's power of knowledge. It's called Jnana Shakti. Icha Shakti is called desire. That's Rajaguna. That's why they say, in the beginning was the Lord, and then He desired, and then He created the world. Huh? So they're saying, in the scriptures, in our scriptures and other scriptures, they say God desired to create the world, and so He created. So that means the Rajas. He had the desire. What?
How about the verb?
The what?
In the beginning was the verb.
The word.
The word.
The word. Oh yeah, that means, that's sattva. The word means knowledge. In other words, you can't have a creation without knowledge. Words are knowledge, right? Words are expression of knowledge, that's all. We have these words because we have sattva. These words describe our understanding, our knowledge. We have the word existence, for example. Why? Why do you have the word existence? Because I exist and I know what existence is, and I need a word to describe what existence is. So I have the word. In other words, I have the knowledge of existence because there's a word there. There's a word there, it means I have knowledge of existence. So that's what they mean. In the beginning was the Word was with God. In other words, the knowledge was with God. That is, so this was God's knowledge. The world is God's knowledge appearing here. That's the idea. Okay. So he says here, then, I'm mindful, I'm keeping track of the time.
The power, desire, and
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Ishta, you said Ishta Shakti was the,
Ishta
what was
Shakti.
the?
Each Shakti,
Jnana Shakti.
yeah, and
Avaratam.
Avarana Shakti or Dravya Shakti, it means matter. Concealing Shakti, the denial, you know. Matter's like a black hole. I used that analogy yesterday. It's like a black hole. That's what causes denial. That's what causes ignorance. Because no light escapes from a black hole. Right? A black hole meaning a place where there's so much gravity that light can't escape. So there's no reflection there. There's great big pools, evidently, throughout the cosmos where there's no light escaping. Means what? The tamas is so overpowering that it overpowers the sattva completely and no light can escape. Those are called black holes. And anything material is basically a black hole. It doesn't reflect light. That's why you can't see the self in material objects. You can see the self in human beings. Why? Because they have sattva and they reflect light. It's easy to see the self in human beings because they reflect light. I mean, you don't know that the light you're looking at is a reflection, but you can infer there must be an original light behind that reflection, and then you can know that consciousness, what consciousness is, by, you know, understanding what a human being is, or seeing a human being. But you can't see, you'll never come up with the idea that this is all consciousness by looking at a chair or a table or any one of these things. Why? Because they're total tamoguna. It's complete matter, and matter absorbs light. It doesn't reflect light. Sattva reflects light, and matter absorbs light. Huh? It sucks it up, so there's no reflection, so how are you going to see it? So, you know, this is a big problem for people when they get to a more sophisticated level of understanding of Vedanta, because they say, well, okay, I can understand consciousness well enough, but what about the material world? It doesn't look like consciousness to me. Is that right? I mean, how do you explain the material world? You can look inside and you can see the consciousness shining, like in the meditation. Could you feel the reflection? Could you see the reflection? Were you aware of the light shining inside yourself? That knower, that light, that sign? You could experience that. That's fair enough. But what about, okay, so there is a self inside me that's shining, that's illuminating my thoughts and all that. That I can understand. But what about this table or this wall? Where's the self there?
existence.
Huh?
Existence.
Yeah. No, existence. Existence. The self, does the wall exist? Huh? Does it exist? Yes, it exists. And what's the relationship? Is existence different from consciousness? No. So there you get to see consciousness as existence, because they're non-separate. Understand? Now because your idea of consciousness is, well, it's all shiny and bright and all that, right? But sat, consciousness is sat, and sat means what is. So there's a whole lot of most of the creation is just what? Matter. It's absorption. It's absorptive. And so you only can understand it as yourself as an existence aspect of consciousness. Anyway, we're getting off the topic. Well, not really, but. And what does this prana jiva do? This original eternal individual, this eternal conscious being do? It identifies with the reflecting medium, the subtle body, which is made of sattva and accounts for the belief that it is a conscious being in its own right. You think you don't realize that you're borrowing your consciousness from the self, do you? You think you're conscious on your own. Why? Because you have identified with the reflection. The reflection is shining here, so you think that reflection is the original. And because you think the reflection is the original, when you hear about the self, the original, you think it's an object. Mm-hmm. You imagine that the self is an object. This is where when you enter the spiritual world, they're all telling you that the self is an object that you need to experience or that you need to know. Because they've never been taught properly. So immediately what do? You go to try to experience the self or to know the self, not realizing that you are the self, because you've taken yourself to be the reflection. But what Maya does, it reverses the relationship between the subject and the object, between the consciousness and the body. And it makes it look like the self is an object and that what? And that you are the subject, that the object is the subject. So it reverses the relationship. We call it viparaya. Viparaya means reversal. I understand this is hard to understand. It's pretty subtle. So don't worry if you're not getting it. We'll keep at it. So what did it say? This jivas think, well, they think I'm conscious. But you're actually a thief. This is a word we use in the scripture. You're a debtor. You're in debt. If you say I'm conscious, you don't realize you're indebted. That you've borrowed your consciousness. Where did you borrow it from? From the original, from Ishwara. But no, you think you're a little Ishwara. This is why everybody's trying to play God. See? Because you think you're a little Ishwara. You want to act like God. You want to control everything, and you know how it is. Isn't it right? So wouldn't you like to control everything? Don't you think you're the center of the whole universe? All that. Yeah, you do. When you wake up in the morning and look in the mirror, you think you're pretty wonderful. For a second, maybe. And even if you don't, you'd love to control everything, wouldn't you? So you could get everything you wanted. You'd love to be God, you know. No, you're a debtor, you're in debt the moment you appear here. And you don't realize you're in debt. This is why you always feel guilty. You don't know how to pay back your debt. Huh? You're in debt, but you don't know it, so you feel guilty. You don't know where's this guilt. You know that free-floating anxiety, that guilt that you feel? That has no real connection to anything? That is just floating inside your mind somewhere? It isn't really about your job or your wife or your kids or anything in the world. It just attacks you from within, that existential guilt. You know, that's because Maya got you by the short and curlies, and you feel guilty. You don't even know why. That's why, because you borrowed and you don't know how to get back your debt. You don't know how to get out of debt. Vedanta is getting you out of debt. If you understand this, you pay back your debt, and the guilt goes away. All that, the way you're going to solve it. Okay, I love this. So yeah, the belief that it is a conscious being in its own right, whereas the consciousness it enjoys, meaning the jiva, actually belongs to original consciousness. Puran, Bimba, Chaitanya. These are the technical words that are here in the Panchadasi. Like Thomas, Rajas is responsible for erroneous knowledge, false knowledge, fake news. Fake news. Yeah, I should have put that in there. Fake news, well, we didn't know about fake news until recently. That's new. No, we did. They knew about it thousands of years ago. It's called erroneous knowledge. Rajas is responsible for erroneous knowledge. Why? Because it transforms consciousness into objects and makes it appear to be something other than what it is. Ooh. You're actually looking at consciousness when you're looking at an object, but you think it's something other than consciousness. So you got the wrong idea. Holy moly. This is way too complicated. Let's just take some dope and get high.
Can you repeat the last sentence?
What?
Can you repeat the last sentence?
Let's take some dope.
That's the one before.
Oh, erroneous knowledge. You think, when you're looking at me, you think I'm James teaching Vedanta, but I'm consciousness. I'm just consciousness, appearing as James teaching Vedanta. This is not James teaching Vedanta, this is consciousness.
Yourself.
Apparently teaching Vedanta. Me, it's me, consciousness, appearing as something other than consciousness. I don't look like consciousness, do I? I look like this sort of chubby, avuncular, aging hippie. I am. I'm a chubby, avuncular, aging hippie. Avuncular means uncle-like. But actually, I'm limitless, non-dual, access, ordinary, unconcerned, radiant awareness. But you don't know that. You're mistaking. You got it wrong, guys. That's called erroneous knowledge. Well, the Rajas guna is responsible. Raja and Tama guna together are responsible for erroneous knowledge. The Tamas hides the object, and Rajas projects an object where there isn't an object. It puts a notion on the object that hides the object. So you see the notion, you don't see the object. You don't see what is actually there, you see what Rajas is putting there. And you think that what Rajas is putting there is actually there. So you're never really transacting with the object at all, you're transacting with the projection all the time. And you don't know it's a projection, so you take it to be real.
As a projection.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Spiritual world, boy, look at that. The people, the stuff, the projections there. Kind of just fantasies. And people believe them. I mean, they really, seriously, take your thoughts to be real. Do you believe your thoughts? Yeah, answer better shake your head and say no. If you do, you know, if you believe what you think, you're in trouble. If you believe what you're feeling, you're in trouble. Believe me. You need to examine your thoughts and your feelings and see if they're real or not. See what they really are. Because when you actually look into them, they dissolve. They dissolve back into me. They're resolved into awareness, unless you got a teaching like Byron Katie where they don't resolve them back into awareness, they just leave you neurotic. You know, that's the problem with these teachings that dissolve projections without teaching the self, without revealing the self, and yoga. And you got a big problem from them. That's all I was saying. Yeah, so they both transforms it transforms consciousness into objects and makes it appear to be something other than what it is. Now, here's the next statement. Okay, we got to tell you this because the Neos are telling you that it's bullshit, and we're telling you no, it's not bullshit. This is a fact. They don't like it. The jiva has free will. Okay, it's just a statement. It is a reflection cast in the image of awareness, and it is free. Now listen to this. It is free to claim that it is pure consciousness only, pure consciousness, comma, only when it understands why it is pure, original, unreflected consciousness. You can only claim it if you know why. If you claim it not knowing why, you're ignorant. We got all these people out there claiming it, but they don't know why. But it's enough to fool us, so we sign up and, etc. You know the story. It says, Vedanta makes the why clear. That's our job, is to make it clear why. So that you can claim you're what? This, on the basis of knowledge, on the basis of, facts. Knowledge is a fact. Knowledge is what is. Knowledge is what you can't negate. If something's negatable, it's not knowledge. Understand? I am the self, I am consciousness, existence consciousness is knowledge. Why? Because you cannot negate that fact. How would you deny your existence as consciousness? How do you do that? People, can you do that? You can't do that. Why can you? You can't say I don't exist, can you? Huh? A person who says I don't exist is a moron. Huh? He's an absolute moron. Why?
Because even by saying I do not exist, that person...
Yeah, you have to exist to say you don't exist. If you're non-existent, how can you say I don't exist? How come these people can't see through that? Huh? In the spiritual world, you got this whole business out there. People acting big because they don't exist. And impressing other people because they don't exist. Huh? Excuse me? How can you say I'm not conscious? I'm not conscious. What do you mean? The very fact that you're saying it proves that you're conscious. Those are the two facts about you that nobody has to teach you. Hey, did your mom say, just a minute, excuse me. You know, now that you can understand what I'm saying, I'm going to tell you, you're conscious. Son, you know, yeah, I want you to know you're conscious. And also, you need to know you exist. Did your mom or dad ever tell you that? Did anybody ever tell you that? No. Nobody ever did, nobody ever will. There's no need to, because it's a self-evident fact that I exist and that I'm conscious. It's not. This is self-knowledge. We all have self-knowledge. We just don't know what it means to say, I exist and I'm conscious. That's all. We don't know what it means. In terms of what? In terms of this world, in terms of our body, mind, intellect entities, and our karma stream, and so forth and so on. We don't understand what it means, but we all know. We're all enlightened. We all know we exist, and we all know we're conscious. We don't know maybe that we're limitless. That might be a part that you need to take care of. Because saying I exist and saying I'm conscious doesn't necessarily mean that I'm limitless. But we can teach you that pretty simply, pretty easily. But the fact is that I am, the I am, when you say I, that I am existence is what? Self-evident. This is why everybody's enlightened. You know, until they open their mouth. You know, as soon as you open your mouth, then it becomes clear that you don't know, you don't think you're limitless existence consciousness. Because you start doing all this and that. You know, whining and complaining and judging. You got all these stupid things come out of your mouth, and then immediately we can tell you don't know who you are. But as long as you keep your mouth shut, then you're enlightened to us. It's true. No, people think I'm some sort of genius. That's bullshit. I'm just a normal guy. You know, but, you know, I just see everybody as the self, and then, but I get them to talk, and as soon as they talk, then I can say, oh, they don't know who they are, whatever it is, but, But up until that point, I assume that you're the self. I don't know that you got problems. You don't look like you got problems to me. You look like me. I don't see any difference at all. But as soon as you open your mouth and say, what about this, or what about that? Oh, I've been 6 years, 8 years, and I still don't have my moksha. Oh, okay, well I can help you there.
But even then it's pretending, isn't it?
Huh?
Even then it's pretending. It's self-pretending to have a problem, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's not really self having a problem, it's a pretending, it's an act.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong
It's a
with
thought.
that.
Huh?
It's a thought.
It's a thought. It's all a thought.
James, why did you use the word why in the last sentence instead of how? Because on the why question there is no answer.
Sure there's an answer. The answer, you need to know why. You got to resolve your doubt. Huh? I've got a doubt. I've got to get rid of the doubt. I want to know why. That's why we have a teaching. The teaching explains why you are limitless. We have, that's all these prakriyas, like remove your doubts, your ignorance, and they explain why.
It teaches how.
How what? Okay, what? Okay, let's see. I think you're thinking of something else. I think you're thinking of another teaching here. You're confusing two
Because when you
teachings.
ask the question why is there something like Maya, there's no answer.
Well, why there's no why for Maya, but I need to know. The answer is there's no why for Maya. So, right?
Yeah.
The answer for why Maya is there's no answer for why Maya. Yeah, how Maya works, that's what we're doing now. We're trying to explain how Maya works. Hey, why there's Maya? Hey, nobody knows. I don't know, the scripture doesn't know, the sages don't know, the Upanishad doesn't know. Nobody knows why there's Maya.
Why not?
And why, yeah. And why, I said, why not Maya? We're not interested in the why, we're interested in the how, because we're suffering. If there is Maya, it's a fact. If I don't know what it is, I'm suffering. If I don't want, I mean, look, our bias is, we do have a bias, and I don't know if you figured this out, you probably have, but our bias is, and we're supposed to be a science, but we actually are biased, because our bias is what? Suffering's bad. Now, is suffering bad? If suffering's good for you, then you don't need to worry about Vedanta. Because, if you're happy suffering, then you don't need Vedanta. Right? So, now who's happy suffering? I don't know. Maybe there's somebody that is happy suffering. But our idea is to know nobody's happy suffering. Why? Because their nature's free, and their nature's ever free, blissful, non-dual, actionless, ordinary existence awareness. So why not know this and solve the suffering problem? That's our argument. Anyway. Oh God, we've gone over and I got through this paragraph. I'll just a couple more things, okay? Just, can I go 1 or 2 more minutes, please? Oh, at this stage, this is in the second stage now, we're still talking the second stage. At this stage, sattva is present in a supporting role, but rajas is dominant. Because sattva is contaminated with rajas, this jiva's knowledge is mixed with ignorance. So you have self-knowledge, but you also have self-ignorance. They're mixed up here. Okay? Rajas is called a mixture. One of the words for rajas is a mixture. So here in pure sattva there's no mixture, but now when sattva recedes and rajas becomes dominant, then the whole thing becomes a big soup, a big mix. And so there's some problems here. There's confusion. There's spiritual confusion at this stage. Jivas are full of misconceptions. Okay? We're not saying they're bad or they're good. We're just saying that because they're a mixture of knowledge and ignorance, they have misconceptions. They're not sure what is knowledge and what is ignorance. In fact, most jivas think that ignorance is knowledge. They don't know the difference. This is why it's very difficult to teach jivas. Because they have all these beliefs and opinions which they take to be knowledge. They've never examined them properly. And when they hear this teaching, they have a problem. They want to fight. They want to argue. It's really difficult for them. That's why there's very few people into Vedanta, seriously into Vedanta. They just can't. They don't want to face their stuff. This takes a lot of courage. This takes a lot of integrity to stand up to yourself and face this stuff and say, I was wrong. I didn't get it. I misunderstood. I was wrong. And let go of those beliefs and opinions that I have about myself and about the world and so forth and so on, So it says here. Jivas are full of misconceptions. Vidyaranya, the author, calls these individuals chidabhasas. That means reflected consciousnesses. They can, now listen to this, the last little fact about this. They cannot be separated from the reflecting medium, the subtle body. Means what? You're totally identified with what you think and feel. The reflecting medium is a subtle body, and in the reflecting medium, all the thoughts, in other words, all the thoughts are generated out of the reflecting medium. The thoughts and the feelings come out of the reflecting medium. So I'm identified with my mind, my reflecting medium, and what? Therefore, I believe that the thoughts and feelings are real. See the problem? It's a science. It's not like we're, trying to argue with anybody. We're just pointing out, hey, when you start understanding how this works, then now you suddenly, I've got some kind of objectivity about my stuff. Huh? Once you get a little objectivity, a little distance, and that's what knowledge does. It produces dispassion. So you get some distance on your stuff, then you can start to work with your stuff. But if you're just, if you're identified and you're trying to disidentify, you can't do it. You need the knowledge. The knowledge will disidentify you. The knowledge will produce the dispassion and the distance you need so that you can objectify your stuff and work on it. The Byron Katie thing is an objectification of your stuff. And it's a good little tool up to a point, but again, you see, it doesn't include the whole enchilada here. So, once you've got rid of all your stuff, or once you realize that you're projecting everything, you suddenly, right, are faced with this tremendous anxiety. Because then why am I creating this? Yeah. Why am I, that's scary. Because you don't want to usurp God's position. You don't want to take the responsibility of being God here. We've got to get you separate from God, all right? You don't need to know what belongs to God and what belongs to you. We call it Ishwara Shristi. We're talking now Ishwara Shristi. Ishwara means Ishwara is creation. We're not talking about Jiva's creation. We're talking about Ishwara's creation. And you want to get that separate. You don't want to. Human beings are always trying to usurp. They're identifying themselves as God or with God, and you don't want to do that. We're going to put Ishwara's stuff on Ishwara. We're going to put Jiva's stuff on Jiva, and we're going to see what the connection is, and where there is no connection, and what we can do about it. But we got to unravel this ball of wax, this ball here of misconceptions that are keeping us ignorant and keeping us bound.